All right, welcome everyone. It's 1 or 2 minutes past the hour, so it's time to get started. Welcome to the webinar today on how to build a CNN type news chatbot for your organization. My name is Chris McGrath. That's a picture of me. You can find me on Twitter at Tangowork. Be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn too, and my website is tangowork.com. You'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the deck here the hashtag we're going to use if you have any questions or comments. Newsbots. It's used for other things too, but I saw that nobody had used it on Twitter for 3 days, so I think it's safe to tie us all together. Newsbots. So you can tweet using that. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to type them into the questions panel, and we'll get to the questions later on in the webinar. There's quite a range of people connected today, people who are quite technical in nature and people who are not, who are more product managers, program managers. Let me just launch a poll here. What is your interest in chatbots? Can you answer that poll? Is it external use you're interested in? Is it internal use? Are you a consultant or a developer, or are you not interested in chatbots, which would mean you may be in the wrong webinar? Just give you another few minutes there to enter your responses. What is your interest in chatbots? All right, we're at 75% voted. Can we get to 100%? Probably not. Somebody probably left and had to go get a glass of water. All right, I'm gonna stop it there. And now you can see the results there, that 22% of you are interested externally, 56% internally, and that probably is because that's really my thrust at Tangowork is internal use. And a large portion of you are looking at this as a consultant or a developer. So that's great. Thanks for that feedback. I co-founded Thought Farmer. I don't know if you've heard of it. It powers the corporate intranets of about 200 or so companies. And I left Thought Farmer about 2 years ago, and now I've started a new company called Tangowork, and that's all about chatbots for internal communications. And this webinar today is being presented in partnership with Enterprise Strategies. They're a consultancy that specializes in the digital workplace. And they have many Fortune 500 clients whom they've helped with the rollout of social intranets or enterprise social networks such as Yammer. And together, Tangowork and Enterprise Strategies offer chatbot software and chatbot consulting and chatbot custom development. So let's get into our topic for today, how to build a CNN chatbot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the CNN chatbot. Here I've got Facebook Messenger on my computer, and you can see I've got recent bots that I've talked to. Oh, whoop, there I am. And then people that I've had personal conversations with down later on. So to find a bot, Facebook Messenger lets you scan a code, but you can also type it in. Now, CNN offers their bot on a lot of different platforms. Facebook Messenger is probably the most robust. Now, for internal bots, Facebook Messenger is probably not the platform of choice. And so later on, we're going to look at Skype for Business and also just a web chat that's embedded in an intranet. But we'll start off here. So first of all, you see an introductory screen that gives you an idea of what's going to happen if you engage with this bot. And then you've got the Get Started button. Facebook Messenger has done a really nice job on the initial startup of the bot. And so when I click Get Started, it tells me what I can expect here. It instantly gets my name, and it suggests editors, picks, topics, or help. Notice on the bottom, there's a persistent menu here. And this is a feature of Facebook Messenger and Kik, but not all platforms, where you can connect a permanent menu. And you can see it's the same as these buttons that it's given me. So help tells me a little bit about how to use the bot. Importantly, it gives me the unsubscribe button so I can stop getting the daily push notifications. If I click topics, That's going to suggest different typical news categories that you would expect from a public news provider, like news, politics, business, technology, entertainment, sports, that kind of thing. And then the editor's picks. Before we look at that, actually, I'm going to send a message. And so this is where you can type whatever you want. So I can type business, and it's going to give me any of their business stories that match that tag. Here it uses the very visual cards format, which Facebook first popularized, but is now really used in every messaging platform except for the ones that can't support it, such as SMS. But it works really nicely. Now, if I type something in like, say, Mark Twain, give me your stories about Mark Twain, it doesn't know what to do. So it's fairly limited in what it can respond with. Like it suggests here, just tech, politics, entertainment, typical news categories is what the CNN bot anticipates. And editors' picks, this is the most important part, and this is really the only part of the CNN bot I look at because it sends these to me every day. So I get the top stories and I scroll through them. Sometimes I don't touch any, but if there's one that interests me, I'll click it. Now this one I wanted to know, Covfefe, when a typo goes viral. That was an interesting one. Notice that it gives me three options: read story, get a summary, or ask CNN. What I really like about the CNN bot is this middle one, get a summary, because somebody has edited this story down small enough so that it fits inside my chatbot. And it talks about the incomplete tweet that Trump set out yesterday. Despite the constant negative press, Covfefe. And that was it. No, that's interesting, I guess. Is that newsworthy? Is that a top headline? Well, I clicked it. Now, now we've looked at the basic parts of the CNN news bot. Now, why should you consider a news bot for your organization? Well, first of all, if you're considering a news bot externally, a news bot might be another channel that you can use to incrementally expand your audience. That's what CNN has done, right? Of course, they have their website, they've got their television channel, they've got a Twitter feed, a Facebook page, but now you can also get their news via bots. So for a small portion of the audience, that's valuable, and that's expanded their viewership incrementally. And more importantly, they're looking towards the future, right? Because they expect that this is going to grow. Another reason to consider bots is you may reach an entirely new audience. In reading up about CNN's experiments with bots, they were most pleased with what happened on Kick, because Kick is a bot that's not very popular in my age group. I don't know of anybody using it, but in certain regions there are young teenagers that are heavily engaged with Kick, and CNN saw huge uptake of their news bot on the Kick channel, and they feel they're reaching a new audience, those young teenagers. So that's interesting. Now let's talk about internally, because most of you are here thinking about internal use for a news bot. Well, let's say you use your Microsoft shop. So you probably use Skype for Business, perhaps, or maybe you're dabbling with the new Microsoft Teams. Well, using a chatbot, you can deliver news within those channels that people are already using. So you can give them the news without switching contexts. So compare that, say, if somebody's spending a lot of time in Microsoft Teams, if they have to go to the intranet to get news, they have to go into an entirely new frame of mind, a new interface, a browser, and so on. But you can give them the news where they already are without switching contexts. Another reason to consider a news bot is for non-desk workers. So if you have an organization where a large percentage of your employees do not sit at desks and perhaps don't even have email addresses, chatbots present a huge opportunity, right? Getting them news on their phones, which they likely do have. So that would be industries like hospitality, retail, restaurants, industrial, logistics, healthcare, manufacturing. In those industries, you've got a lot of people that aren't sitting at desks and may not have email, and this opens up a new powerful way to get in contact with them. Another reason why you might look at a news bot is to increase readership of your news. One study said 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. And because it forces you to be concise and edit down your message really short like this, it's more likely that your message will get read. And then another thing to consider is that this kind of UI, conversational UI, is the future of UI. What is conversational UI? It's a user interface that mimics speaking to a real human, right? Whether by text or by voice. And importantly, with a conversational user interface, you don't have to learn the interface, right? You just need to type or talk, and you already know how to type. You already know how to talk. You don't have to learn certain commands either. You just use natural language. And I think, well, why is this the future of user interfaces? Well, watch a young child use your phone or use your tablet. I think about my young boy. He uses voice, right? He's got a project where he's got to bring a picture of a certain bird to school. He opens up his tablet and he presses the microphone and he says, "Siri, show me pictures of a parrot," right? And it works. And now, that's not how I do it. I open my Chrome browser on my desktop and I type parrot pictures, or I go straight to images.google.com. But you see where it's going when you watch how natural it is for young kids to use conversational UI. Now, today we're not talking so much about voice bots. We're talking about creating a text-based chatbot. But everything you do for a text-based chatbot is a step along the way to a voice-based chatbot as well, because all the plumbing is the same. The services offered by Microsoft and Amazon and Google take voice and turn it into text. Then you can deal with it, you can send text back, and then the service provided by Facebook or Microsoft or Google or Amazon takes that text and turns it back to voice, right? Using a service like Amazon Polly. So making a text-based news bot is one step along the way to having a voice-based chatbot. All right, so now we're going to talk about planning your news bot. And this is going to start with the steps that all of you can do. This is not technical at all. And I think you'll see in the handouts at the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel, there's 3 different handouts. Because I'm not on your end, I can't see if you can access those. Can somebody just chat or tell me, can you access the handouts? I see them here in my GoToWebinar control panel. But the first one there is the chatbot planning sample. And that's a little spreadsheet to help you with the basic planning, really, of any straightforward chatbot. Now I'm going to bring it up on my screen here. So you see here we've got core content and utilities, and a bunch of different columns here with different information that you need to add. And I just got confirmation that yes, you can access this spreadsheet, so that's great. I'm going to explain what some of these terms mean. Look at this here. Show me the top stories. So we're just going to learn a little bit of chatbot parlance here. The utterance is show me the top stories. Utterance is the term that's used in the industry for anything that the user types or speaks into the chatbot. It's an utterance. Now, the intent of this utterance is get news. Now, get news, that word, you can choose it at random. It could be show news or it could just be news. But the intent is, what is the user's intention here? Although they used 5 different words to say, show me the top stories, what is this really? Well, it's news. It's get news. So that's what the intent is. Now, if they said, show me the top stories about sports, the utterance is now show me the top stories about sports. The intent is still get news, but now there's an entity, and the entity is sports. So that's a little qualifier that modifies the intent. And we could substitute that word sports with news topic, right? Show me the top stories about blank, about the entity. So the entity there is news topic. So using those three words, utterance, intent, and entity, we go back to our spreadsheet. And if you start with something basic like this is how you will plan really any informational type chatbot. So intent name, we're going to call it show news. And what are some sample utterances? Well, we could just say news. We could say show me the news. We could say I want headlines. Give me top stories, right? And that's just enough to give me an idea as, say, a chatbot consultant of what you're trying to do with that intention. Now, there may be no entities because maybe you don't produce a lot of news. And really everything's just going to fall into that one category of organizational news. But if you do have a lot of news, you're going to need some entities, and that might be related to the date of the news, or it might be related to the topic of the news. So let's just add an entity. We'll call it news topic. And now I'll say, show me news about sports, or I am looking for business headlines. Now, the content source, that's just wherever you're going to get it from. So maybe you're getting it from your e-newsletter. And how are you going to sort this? Well, news is always sorted just by newest, right? And are you going to show one at a time, or are you going to show a whole bunch? If you're going to show a list, then how are you going to present it? And cards is the layout that the CNN bot uses. A numbered list might be something that you use on SMS, right? You send a list of news items and then the user just responds with a one or two. But cards is a popular one these days. So for your internal news bot, you might also have alerts. And this is, how would you ask for that? Are there any alerts? Are there IT notifications? This would all depend on your domain, right? Did IT make an emergency announcement today? All right. And our entity here would be alert topic. And again, you might not need to have those at all. Where's the source coming from? Maybe today you send alerts to a mass email list internally. And again, we're going to want to sort those by the newest, and we'll display them as cards. So this is just a simple spreadsheet to get you started on your chatbot planning. And this is how I start all the chatbots that I build. Just a simple spreadsheet like this. Now, utilities is talking about chatbot content that's not really your core content, but helps pull the user along. So an example would be help, right? What would some sample utterances be? Help, help me, or I'm confused, or what does this bot do, right? That's getting us started. There's no entities with this one, right? There's not a certain kind of help we want. We just want general help. Content source, but I don't think that's relevant. The sorting, I don't want any kind of list, right? I just want to send the help. And the sorting, well, it's probably just random, right? So if I say random, then it can have several different help messages, and it presents a variety of responses back to the user. Another utility might be greeting, because people often might say hi, or hello, or hi there, right? Or another intent name might be thanks. Sometimes after the chatbot responds with an answer, people say thanks. And it's nice if the chatbot doesn't say, sorry, I don't understand that input, right? So that's what utilities are all about. Thanks, thank you, that's great, and again, random, and it's not a list. So using this template that you can download there, that helps you plan out your chatbot content. Now, I should note that you don't necessarily have to support human text input if you're using Facebook Messenger or Kik, because in those bots you can turn off text input and just use the menu on the bottom, if that makes sense. So again, I'm just going to bring up my little chatbot window. So you see here, you can turn off send a message so that it's impossible to bring up this little input box, and that forces the user to use this bottom menu system. So that might be interesting for certain consumer-facing bots. Currently, Skype doesn't support that internally, and neither does Microsoft Teams. And it also, I think, strays from where this is all heading in terms of conversational user interface. But it certainly makes the building of the bot much simpler if you don't allow any random input, if you just allow people to tap buttons. So I thought I should just clarify that. Now, the next part of planning your news bot is creating your initial content, or the content that you're going to launch with, or the content that you're going to test with. And this is very hard. This is very time consuming. Doing this and creating your content, that's a lot of time. So I've created a few examples here. So I'm going to create a finance bot here in a few minutes, or show you one. So I was gathering some finance-related news, so I went to the JP Morgan Chase and looked at, here's a news release about a new director. This is too long, right, to send in a chatbot? So what do you do with this? You've got to cut it down. And so here is what I did to cut that down. And instead of JP Morgan Chase, I used this fake name, Citadel. Citadel announced today that its board of directors has elected Todd Wilcox, 45, a director of the company, effective June 10, 2017. Todd Wilcox is an investment officer at Berkshire Hathaway, and then a nice quote from the CEO. This is now short enough to work in a chatbot. Maybe it's even on the kind of the upper edge, but way shorter than the original press release. I did this for a few other articles, like one for Geico. Geico had this article on teen drivers. What are the best cars that you can use for them? And so again, this is a long article. Oh, I mean, it's not long for a web browser, right? But it's too long for a chatbot. So this is really the challenge with a news bot, is gelling these articles down to what's the bare essence. That's what you have to do to make it work in a chatbot. But on the plus side, once you figure out what the essence of the article is, it's going to make it easier to get that message across, right? Because you're gelling it down to just what is absolutely most important. So now we've got some seed content to use, and we've got our intents ready to go. Now I'm going to take this article and these news items in a few minutes and plug them into a sample bot. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about natural language processing. So now we transition in the webinar from things that any communications person has to do to things that start getting a little more technical. And I'm going to start with natural language processing because it's something that you'll want to understand anyway as a product manager or a project manager. I'm going to show you what I would do to make these intents and these utterances make sense to a back end. Remember that you don't have to do any of this because you can hire somebody like me, or you can get somebody on your team to work with it. So I'm going to use the Lewis natural language processing engine. Lewis is provided by Microsoft, and this is the engine that we use in Tangowork for decoding natural language. Now, there's several ones available out there. Well, the one by Amazon is called Amazon Lex. Google has one too. I'm forgetting what the name of it is. Facebook has their own. It's called wit.ai. So there's lots of different ones. I've experimented with all of them, and I keep coming back to Lewis. I really like the way it works. So the bot I'm making is called Citadel. Citadel is a fake company. I'm going to show it to you here in Skype. Here, there it is. Here's my blank Citadel bot. We're pretending it's a financial services company, so it's got a nice little castle logo because that makes it look strong and financially safe, right? And so does blue. Now, if we say hi to our little Citadel bot, or if we just say, news. Great, it shows me the news, right? So I've already put this content in, and now I can read a news item. Here's my news item. Okay. Now I want to show you what happens if I say top stories. Sorry, I couldn't find a match for that. So my bot currently doesn't understand top stories. So notice in Lewis, I go to the intents. These are the list, a very short list of the intents that I planned. Alerts, greeting, help, news. Notice it says that there's 56 different utterances for news, but apparently one of them is not top stories. So I just type top stories. It shows me that currently, 77% chance that that none is the correct intent for this, and just a 0.01% chance that news is the correct intent. So I'm going to save this, and that is telling it that news is the correct one. Now I'm going to go over to publish this app. I'm going to train it. So now it's going through all the utterances I've listed. Train successful, and publish. Now if I go back to my bot, if I type top stories, now it understands, and it gives me the top stories. So that's great. Now, an interesting thing that you get with natural language processing is it's more than just top stories. Now I can say, like, show me the top stories. And hopefully it works. Show me the top stories. And look at that, it still comes through, right? So that's the beauty of natural language processing engine. You don't have to come up with every single permutation. It understands the different parts of speech and can extract, just based on the fact that I told it the top stories means news, it can understand the rest, right? Now, you don't have to come up with all of these different terms on your own. When you load this, when you deploy your bot to a pilot group, a test group, everything that they type at the bot is captured. And so I can go to intents in my Lewis, my natural language processing engine, and I can click suggested utterances. And suggested utterances, it's recommendations that the engine has that would improve the accuracy of its responses. I'll give it a second here to come up with the list. But it's going to come up with a recommendation. Let's help it again. Suggested utterances. All right, it's not coming up here. So I'm going to show you one other piece of the natural language publishing engine. Notice this endpoint, the endpoint URL. This lets me access the natural language processing engine completely via text. So if I go to the end of the URL it's using, see where it says Q? Q equals, that's the query. So I can say, what are the top headlines? and I click enter, see, this is what's coming back to my bot and what my bot is figuring out. What are the top headlines is the query, and the top scoring intent is news. Now, what if I make a spelling mistake? What are the top, let's say, headlines? Oh, it still figured it out. How bad can I get my spelling? What are the top headlines? What I wanted to show you. It's still coming through. There's also the ability to turn on a spell check. And you just associate a license key with Bing, and that what it does is everything that goes through the natural language processing engine will first be checked by Bing and transformed into a query that can be understood, that it can process better. And so that gives you the spell check so people can misspell when they're chatting with your bot. So let's go back to what we're looking at here is the Tangowork management interface. Now, you need to have some place to put your content for your bot, right? And so in Tangowork, we built this content management system that holds the content. And so to put that content in that we defined earlier, I click add a message, and I'm going to pop it over here. So let's take this one. First boat, how to pick the perfect boat. So there's my text. You can see the default intent was news. So all the default alerts, news, and rates, these are the intents that I pre-configured for this bot based on that spreadsheet that we did. I can say when this item is, what the date is and when it's going to be available and when it expires. This is all typical stuff you would expect of any content management engine. And then because we're using a bot channel that supports images, I can upload an image and use that too. So I'll click upload. In this case, we'll just do a royalty-free web search for sailboat and pick one of these. That looks nice. I can crop it or apply a filter, but I'll just upload that as is and let the engine deal with it and save. And so now we've got a boat. I'll save that. We'll add another one. Best cars for new teen drivers. In this case, I'll upload an image from my computer. Best cars. Great, upload. Save. So you get the idea here. Now that those are there, I can go over to my chatbot. Now I say, show me the news. Oh, my phone's not showing anymore, so I'm just going to flip over. Instead of showing you on my phone, I'm going to show you on the Skype client. There's the desktop client, so you can imagine having this. So I said, show me the news, and there's the article that I just entered. Best cars for new teen drivers, or first boat, how to pick the perfect one. Let's look at this teen drivers item. I see I need to go in there and clean up some of the quotes and the spacing. And there's the article on first boat, how to pick the perfect one. And I can scroll through them. So to manage a news bot at your organization, you'll need some sort of content management engine like Tangowork. Now, some news organizations have built bots based purely on an RSS feed. The problem is that the content is not optimized to fit inside a bot, right? And that's what makes the CNN bot so good, is that they've made the effort to take longer news articles and condense them down to the format. And so for that, you need a content management engine. Now, Tangowork here is built off the bot framework. So what you're seeing here is the Microsoft bot framework, and to build a new bot, well, you need some sort of developer to use the Microsoft software development kit. But then you just create a bot, and when you register it, it asks you a bunch of questions. You need to upload an icon, come up with a name, a description, and then you need to configure a bunch of things with regards to your bot. It's actually pretty straightforward for the developer who's created the core bot logic. But once it's done, what's exciting here is adding channels is easy. So there's so many different places your bot could live, right? It could be on Facebook Messenger, it could be on Skype, it could be on Teams. But with the Microsoft bot framework, you only have to write it once, and they handle the deployment across all these different channels. So the Citadel bot that we just looked at, you can see I've got it configured on Facebook Messenger, I've got it configured on Skype, and I've got it configured on web chat. Now, if I want to add it to Teams, Microsoft Teams, I just click here. And that's pretty much it. It's enabled on. I just click on, I'm done configuring Microsoft Teams, and that's really all I need to do. If I want to add it to Skype for Business, I click the icon here, and it gives me some instructions. It's now enabled. Want to add it, I just click Learn How, and I'm just going to add, it's going to give me some instructions here on how to register it. It says I need to be a tenant administrator, I need to open Windows PowerShell and type in that, and I need to run a little commandlet here with my application ID, and I need to give my bot a user ID on the network. So pretty straightforward, and bang, I suddenly have a bot on those networks. Now, I know that something that many of you are probably interested in is, can a bot be embedded on a website or on an intranet? And the answer is absolutely yes. So this bot that we just looked at, the Citadel bot, here's an example of it running within a web browser. So the web browser window could be big or small. The chat window could be over on the right or the left, or small or big or tall or short, however you want. But you see here, if I type hi, the bot's going to come back and say, "Oh, sorry, I couldn't find a match for that." Right? I need to train my engine on a response for a basic greeting. But if I say, "Show me the top stories," this is what it looks like within a web window here. There's our best cars for new teen drivers, our first boat, small businesses in New York expect less growth in 2017. I can click read the news item, and it shows it to me there. So you can see that this works just fine within a web browser, which gives you the ability to embed a bot on your intranet. Now, with a news bot, the broadcasts are really critical, and this is one of the biggest reasons to use chatbots, I think, because with an intranet, say, you can't broadcast to people. Now, in email, you can broadcast to people, but they can't request it on their schedule. Chatbots let you do both. So to broadcast to people, you need to capture their addresses and store them somewhere. And then you need, like in Tangowork, what we do is you've got a whole broadcast tab. You can add a broadcast. So you select the list you're going to do. So I'm going to send it to all staff, 436 people. I'm going to add messages to it. My first two messages, best cars for new driver, my first boat, and my new branch in Manhattan. Save those. There's my 3 news items that I'm going to send out. And I can send an introduction if I want, like here are today's headlines. And I can schedule that broadcast for the future or send it instantly. And now that's pending, and once a minute, all those broadcasts are sent out. From a technical perspective, for those of you who are really technical, what's going on here on the back end, if we just look at the system architecture, is there's content here in the DynamoDB, and it includes broadcasts. Once a minute, we've got a little Node.js thing, a little lambda on a schedule that checks to see are there any broadcasts ready to send, and when there are, it sends it into the queuing system, Amazon SQS, and then that delivers them one by one to the Microsoft Bot framework and then through to the user. Now, for those of you that are considering doing this internally, you may also need to do some sort of employee authorization. This is especially important if you're running your bot on a public network. So you can theoretically make your internal only bot available on something like Facebook Messenger. You've just got to require authorization first. So if we go to our bot, I'm going to go to m.me/ is it Citadel bot. No. Here, we'll do it in Skype here. I'm going to tell it to forget me. Okay, forgotten. Now I type hi, and notice it says, welcome to the chatbot. Please enter your work email address for verification. So the way Tangowork works is on every single request, it checks to see, is this an authorized user? Is this an authorized user? And if it's not, it kicks off a piece of middleware. Now that middleware could bring up, could link to some sort of logon where you authenticate, or what we're using here in Tangowork is a passwordless system where it asks you to verify using your work email address or your phone number. So if I just type chris@tangowork.com, what it's doing here, it's going to send a code to my email address, and if I can provide the code, then it knows I really am who I say I am, right? Because only I have access to my email. So I go over to my email address in my updates, and it's going to come through here in the next couple of seconds. There we go. My verification code is 522895, and I go back to Skype, type that in, and now it knows that I really am who I say I am. That's one way that you can do your bot authentication. And the service we're actually using to perform this in Tangowork is Auth0. If you're a consultant or developer and you're interested, just search for Auth0 passwordless, and it shows you the service that they offer to take care of that for you. So, what are the next steps? Like, what are the first things that you can do to if you want to actually build a news chatbot? Where do you start? I've shown you a bunch of things, a little bit all over the map here. One of the first things you could do is build a prototype. So that's a chatbot that's not fully functional, but as long as it's used under controlled circumstances, it looks like it's functional. And so that's a bot where you can't enter 1,000 different questions, but there's 5 that it answers perfectly, and it looks, for demonstration purposes, like it's really working. So many organizations, many of you attending this webinar, probably need to build a prototype in order to get your mind around what it could do for you, or to build support internally so you for a larger project. One simple way you can do that is use a consultancy like Tangowork and Enterprise Strategies. One offering that I can build you a prototype for what I can offer is for $2,500 you can get a full day of my time as a consultant. We'll plan it together, and your end deliverable will be a 2-minute polished video of a prototype chatbot that looks like it actually works and will demonstrate whatever you are trying to get across with the chatbot. So that's one place you can start. And if you can't build the prototype yourself, which I think most, looking at the attendee list, most of you, it's probably not the thing you want to be spending your time on, learning all the technical stuff. You can use a service like me to build that for you. Another step you could consider is coming to our event, how to build an event chatbot webinar in a month. I'll send that in the follow-up email to this webinar. So if a news chatbot isn't what you're interested in, but you think perhaps you could use a chatbot for a fireside chat or to support an employee town hall or an employee summit or a conference you're putting on, sign up for our webinar there in about a month's time, and that'll be in the follow-up email from this webinar, how to build an event chatbot. Now, can you type your questions into the GoToMeeting questions panel, and we can take some of your questions? Right away, I'll address one that somebody asked in the initial sign-up for the webinar, and it was, what kinds of projects will benefit from chatbots? Like, in other words, I think, how can you evaluate an internal project to see whether it would be worthwhile for a chatbot? And so I thought a little bit about this. A project where the chatbot would be a more convenient way to access the information would be a candidate project, and I think an event chatbot is a good candidate. See, if you've ever been to an event and downloaded a lousy conference app, that's kind of disappointing, right? You got to go to the App Store, find the link, download the thing, sign in, and all that, and then the app itself, I found, is often a royal disappointment. An event chatbot, though, the bar is much lower. It's almost instant to install. You can just scan a code at the entrance to the event, and it can simply answer simple things like, what's the Wi-Fi password, what's the agenda, and what's the bio on this speaker, right? Just the simple things that we all really want to know when we're at an event or a conference. And so I think that is a good candidate project for a chatbot. When the scope is rather constrained, that's a good candidate project for a chatbot. For example, let's say you're doing an office move. You've got a new building, and over the next 3 months, you're moving to it. People have all sorts of questions about, when is my move? Why are we moving? What's in the area? Are there any good restaurants? How much does parking cost? That kind of thing. A chatbot is good because it's constrained, right? Now, to contrast this with something unconstrained, if you put a chatbot on your intranet and invite people to ask it anything, it's going to take a tremendous amount of work and training to be able to accurately answer anything that a person will throw at it, right? But if you constrain the scope and say, this chatbot is only focused on the office move, that's manageable. That's a good candidate project for a chatbot. Another candidate project would be if you've got a laboratory or something where you can't touch anything, and a voice chatbot could add a service. Like, let's say somebody needs to look up reference information for, I don't know, an experiment that they're performing, and they just want to say, hey, what's the chemical formulation for, well, you can tell I've forgotten anything I ever learned about chemistry, and the voice bot could just respond. Voice bots, I think, are good candidate projects for chatbots if you have like a laboratory or something where it's not convenient to actually have to touch an interface. And we already talked about if you can help people avoid context switching by keeping the bot where they already are, such as in Skype Online or Skype Business, or if you've got a large non-desk workforce. So we'll keep on entering your questions here. Bruce asked about chatbots being used for human resources. Do I know which organizations use chatbots for human resources? You'd have to Google just like I would, Bruce. But certainly, one of the things people are excited about is more the interview, not the career interview, but anything where you have to ask a series of questions and you don't do it very often. A chatbot could be a good candidate for. So let's imagine you've just started at your job and they've got to decide what deductions to take. You can imagine a bot stepping you through that process, or one by one, and saying, okay, first of all, do you have any kids at home? No. Do you have any kids in university? Yes. All right. Do you have uh, just all the typical questions that might affect what your deductions are? Those forms that we fill out to determine that for our employer, we don't fill them out very often, right? Like maybe we only change jobs every 3 or 5 years, and so those forms are kind of overwhelming and confusing. A chatbot can break it down and just ask the relevant questions one at a time. And there's all sorts of scenarios like that in HR where a chatbot could be really valuable. Now that is kind of a different kind of chatbot than what I'm showing here. What I'm showing here is a chatbot where you ask a question and it gives a response, or you ask a question, it might clarify and then gives you a response. Right? That's one style of chatbot, and you can do a tremendous amount with it. And think about how Siri works, right, on your iPhone. You pretty much just ask a question, and it does a thing, and it's done. And what you're talking about is really a flowchart type bot, where you've got to map out a whole bunch of steps, and there's one good platform for building those on is Motion.ai. It's a total flowchart based interface, which is really good for that kind of interview process, or step by step, or anything where you might be taking, say, an online form, what was an online form, and turning it into a chatbot. The Motion.ai would be a good candidate for that. And Lamine asks a similar question: how can chatbots help to collect user data? I think that's a similar question, perhaps, to Bruce's, where if you can imagine an online form, a web form, if that would be the traditional equivalent, then you need kind of a flowchart style bot where you step through asking questions one by one. And let me know if I didn't understand your question correctly. I wanted to point out that there's a few more handouts there at the bottom of the webinar. You can download How to Run a Chatbot Strategy Workshop, and this is really the first step in any chatbot project, is figuring out what's the overarching strategy. What can chatbots do? What do your employees need, or what does your audience need, and what are your business objectives? Figuring out what the overlap is between those. If you download that PDF, it shows a process for working on your strategy. And the last handout you'll see there is Chatbot Project Key Steps, which takes you through really all of the high-level steps to go from concept to completion in launching a chatbot. And it will just give you kind of a high-level view of the kinds of things you need to think about as a product manager or a program manager. Somebody's wondering how much Tangowork costs. For internal use, it's $1 a user a month, up to $3 a user a month. That's if it's if it includes Active Directory authentication, which may be needed for certain kinds of bots. And it's a minimum of 500 users, so essentially it starts at $6,000 a year. Plus setup fees, and so there's always consulting involved in getting the bot operational. So that just gives you some kind of high level pricing there. Any other questions that I can answer today? There's another one. Have you ever worked with companies that had highly regulated users? By highly regulated, do you mean perhaps in an industry that has heavy regulation? So is it the users themselves, or is it the entire industry that has a lot of regulation? Okay, yes. Right. These industries might have a bit of problems with chatbots right now, in as much as they have problems with running anything over the cloud. So what you'd want to ask yourself is, are there any other systems that we're using that run on the cloud? What are we doing in the public cloud right now? Because building a chatbot completely on internal systems is going to be a frustrating endeavor. Right? Every single aspect of this stuff goes through the cloud, right? So the Microsoft Bot Framework, it's only available on the cloud, right? All the messaging apps that you're using, that you're receiving data in, they all run through the cloud, right? Facebook Messenger, Skype, and so on. The natural language processing engines, they run in the cloud. And so there should be already some sort of demonstration that your company's comfortable with using cloud-based systems. Now, as long as they're comfortable using cloud-based systems, the security around chatbots is identical really to the security around websites, right? Everything's being passed around on encrypted connections and so on. And so all the best practices for website security apply to chatbot security, and chatbots are absolutely just as secure. But trying to keep it totally internal, I don't think that's really possible. Another question from Camille: can chatbots become intelligent and learn by themselves and make progress and learn by chatting with people? Speaking pragmatically, not yet. Right? You would need teams of people working on it. So practically speaking, I think for what most of us are looking at doing in our organizations, with say 500 employees or 50,000 employees, we're not there yet with chatbots. So we have to be happy with kind of some quasi-intelligence, like the Microsoft Cognitive Services Suite offers. So this quasi-intelligence, like being able to use Lewis as a natural language processing engine. It kind of learns in that I don't have to program every single response. It can extract what's the meaning here. And so that's exciting. And Microsoft has a whole suite of cognitive services that can do things like sentiment analysis, right? And determine on a scale of 0 to 100 how positive or negative is this statement. Or, of course, translation. We're now used to that form of artificial intelligence. Now there's cognitive services where you can upload a picture and it'll tag it for you with surprising accuracy on saying that, you know, this has trees and it's a sunset and it's an ocean and it's nighttime, or that kind of thing. But actually being able to intelligently draw conclusions and improve itself, I think that is the domain of artificial intelligence experts and teams of PhDs, and I think it is out of scope for most of us for right now. Yeah, Bruce talks about IBM Watson, and I think it's the same thing with IBM Watson. It's a little bit oversold in terms of what its capabilities are, and they're large scale projects, right? When IBM comes in to do a Watson project, it's going to be over $1 million, right? They're not doing anything so if you've got the ability to work in that kind of price range, right, like 1 to 5 million, then you might be able to have some intelligence there where it actually learns and improves over time. But I think that's not the budget that I'm looking at with the kinds of chatbots that Tangowork or Enterprise Strategies is building at this time. Yeah. Well, hey, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'll send out the recording to this webinar later today if you want to play it. And please consider joining our next webinar later in the month about how to build an event chatbot. And also, I should mention that you can join our LinkedIn group. I should put it on the screen here. Chatbots for Internal Communicators. And let's connect on LinkedIn if we haven't already. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.